And we're live. Okay, thank you guys for joining us today. I survived Hurricane Beryl. If you didn't know, I'm in the Houston, Texas area, and we got hit pretty bad last week with the hurricane storm. We're out for without electricity for almost a week, but we survived. And I'm back on here to give you some information from your resident YouTube VA lawyer. And let me just put my phone on mute. So if you're joining us now, hop in the comment section, say hi, let me know where you're watching from and which branch of the military you served in. And we had a couple of Space Force veterans last time in the comment section. So I want to know how many of you guys are also Space Force veterans. I don't usually list them, but they're a new branch of the military. So we have Coast Guard, Marines, Army, Air Force, and Navy, and Space Force. So let me know in the comment section which branch of the military you serve. I'm going to talk to you today about, unfortunately, some of the negative parts of when you apply for veterans benefits. There may be people out there lurking and trying to take advantage of veterans and offering scams about the DBQ, the Disability Benefits Questionnaire, which is the form used to evaluate whether someone is eligible for an increased rating based on the severity of their disabilities, or it's also been used for service connection to determine whether you're eligible for service connection. That's the initial part. So I want to kind of walk it through and say why I even brought it up, because there was a VA press release about it, and they wanted to draw attention to veterans so that they're not taken advantage of, to kind of explain the VA compensation process and how the DBQs are an important part of it. The actual VA compensation examiners, whether they be VA employed or contracted out to do the exams, use these forms. Unfortunately, there are some holes in using these forms because of presidential decisions that have been put out that are not implemented in the forms, and that if you use these forms outside of the VA world, you have to make sure whoever you have fill it out knows to include certain things. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And if you're watching, make sure you hop in the comment section and say hi. And I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see. And if you're watching from your phone, I find it helpful to turn the screen sideways because you can see the screen a little bit easier. So hopefully you can see what I'm sharing. And I'm sharing, is it coming up? How to avoid DBQ fraud scam. This is an article put out earlier this month from Monica Cabrera. This is the official VA website that I'm going off of. It says, due to the rise of DBQ scams, VA wants to ensure veterans, including those who choose to have their private healthcare provider complete a DBQ, are appropriately equipped with the information they need to submit DBQs successfully. And explains the DBQ is a streamlined medical examination form designed to collect medical evidence relevant to a claim for benefits. DBQs allow veterans to submit medical evidence from their healthcare provider to support their claims for disability benefits. Veterans are entitled to at no cost disability examination by VA if an examination is deemed necessary to decide the claim for benefits. VA wants veterans to be aware of individuals and companies marketing the service of completing DBQs. Don't be fooled by companies advertising they have a special relationship with medical professionals and can guarantee the veteran a benefits award. When a veteran uses for-profit DBQ companies, the fees may be costly. VHA and VA's contract examination vendors reduce claims processing time by increasing access to examinations. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I'm bringing it to attention because VA is aware that there are people out there that are taking advantage of veterans. And I in some way understand why veterans perhaps take the route of going with a private provider to fill out a DBQ to apply. And there are many reasons for doing this. And I don't think personally there's any problem with doing that, right? For a couple of reasons. But before I go, I forgot to say my disclaimer. Although I'm an attorney, I'm not your attorney. And I leave in the description box a link to VA accredited veteran service officers and VA accredited attorneys that can represent you. So you can check that out. Also in this description box, there's a link to the article just read, and also a link to if you want to actually take and print out a DBQ and have your own private provider fill it out, you are welcome to do so. Okay, so after my disclaimer, I'm going to go back. It's totally okay. And I think veterans do this for many reasons. The VA claims process route is very crowded, and it sometimes may take a long time to get an initial exam, whether you're applying for a service connection, which is the initial step to just getting a benefits, or if you're applying for increased rating where you want to increase whatever rating you already have because of the increased severity of your symptoms, right? Either way, the process can be arduous and can take a long time to just get a VA exam scheduled. To what veterans see as to speed up the process is they go and get their own DBQ filled out by somebody else. It has to be a medical professional, it could be a nurse practitioner, a medical doctor, a DO, right, to fill out this DBQ to help this speed up the process. They submit it when they submit their claim so that the regional office or the agency of original jurisdiction can actually review it and not have to wait for a VA contracted exam. So I see the reason why it's done. What I find the problem is sometimes when you go and have this done, sometimes the DBQ may not be accurate or may lack the information needed to actually have the RO make a decision. And then the RO still has to request a VA exam. Legally, they can't say that a VA exam that is completed by, a VA examiner that completes the DBQ is more probative in value than somebody that's privately contracted to fill it out. But a lot of times when you compare apples to apples, the privately filled out DBQs may be missing critical information that they don't know that needs to be included on the DBQ to actually have the veteran get an increased rating or get the service connection that they need, right? So in theory, you should be able to submit either one of them and get what you want. In practice, it doesn't always happen because, like I said, the private practitioner doesn't know. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see a copy of the DBQs. And it's available. Like I said, I leave this in the description box. And if you're watching your phone, tell your phone sideways so you can actually see a little bit better. So this is a copy right from the VA website, and it's a public DBQ questionnaires, right? So you can ask for this, you can print it out, and then take it to whoever you need to. If you're going for cardiovascular disease, it gives the different ones: dental, dermatological, ear, nose, throat. All these musculoskeletal are the different ones, right? I'm going to give you an example for the musculoskeletal. So let's go to, because this is where I find the problem at. If you go for musculoskeletal, you do the knee and lower leg, right? This is a popular one. And the DBQ has been, I believe, updated, but at some point it was not updated. It was a case that's called Correa versus McDonald that was put out that said that on the VA examination, the examiner has to ask what about passive and active motion, range of motion, right? So passive meaning like if the examiner actually does it versus the veteran actually, he or she moving their leg or knee up and down, right? And you have to determine what is the limitation on the range of motion, right? That was a particular court case that was decided, presidential, meaning that VA has to follow it, that was not included on the DBQ form, right? Let me see this included on this one now. This was released in 2022. So it should be included on there, passive or active. Let's see if I can do a control find real quick. Okay, so they included on this one. So passive range of motion versus active. This previously wasn't included. And you have to actually also say what the unaffected joint is as well, right? Those things were not previously included on the DBQ. So let's say you were going to take this form previous to this form being updated, take this form to your private practitioner and ask them to fill it out. And it did not include that passive range of motion question and answer that's required. If you submitted that along with your claim application and it wasn't there, the RO will likely not make a decision based off of that. They would actually say, hey, this is deficient in some way. We still need to send you for an exam at VA. So in that case, it was not because they just didn't like the private examiners. It was because it was missing something that was crucial and critical to VA meeting its duty to assist you in processing your claim, right? So now this has been updated. That DBQ has been updated. But fortunately, unfortunately, the law changes quite frequently, right? And so being able to keep up with the DBQs and have it available to the public very quickly is hard. I know in the interim before the DBQ was updated, the VA examiners or the VA contracted examiners would actually put in the last part of the DBQ, because the form didn't have it yet, Correa's statement, and they would put in the passive range of motion, active, unaffected joint, range of motion. They would put at the last little box where it just said like remarks or something. And that was their way of filling in that deficiency while the DBQ was updated, right? Because as usual with the VA, this is a bureaucratical society, and updating DBQs form it has a lot of humps to go through. So in the meantime, the VA employees, the VA contractors knew to include that little extra sentence or two in the remarks section. If you went to a private examiner, they would not necessarily know to include that there. And then, like I said, it would be kind of a waste of your time because you would still have to go to a VA contractor one to have that extra statement addressed before your knee or leg could be rated, right? So I want to make sure you keep that in mind when you're deciding to go outside of VA to get it done faster, to make sure that you have the critical things you need to make sure that your claim is properly assessed. This goes for PACT Act claims as well, right? So if you're a PACT Act, I did a whole video about that, PACT Act claims, and they've been adding new disabilities to that recently. So you might not even make it to the DBQ stage if you have if you served in a certain area that's covered by the PACT Act and you have a disability that's covered by the PACT Act. Those are presumptive disabilities, and as long as you can show that you are served in that area, there's no need for a DBQ unless you need to assess the severity of it, right? Not for the initial service connection part of it, right? So I want to make sure that's clear to everybody that's kind of watching. Let me hop in the comment section to see who's watching from, let's see. Hi, Alaskan T. Air Force in Texas. Oh, you're in Texas too? I don't know if you're in the Houston part of Texas like I wasn't, had to endure it. Or, Texas is so huge. I know Dallas is 3 hours north. San Antonio and Austin are 3 hours west. And they didn't have to deal with any of the stuff that we dealt with Hurricane Beryl. But hopefully you were safe during that recent storm last week. And unfortunately, fortunately it was minor damage. But, without electricity in this Texas heat was quite a bit. But anyway, all right. So I wanted to share that with you. I've done previous videos about scams because we want to make sure our viewers are aware. I'm going to share the screen again with you because we have a veterans playlist. And I believe we have 57 videos in there between full service videos and also shorts. And this is a short I did in this month? It was 11 months ago about VA claim. I'm going to share this with you just so you know that we have been trying to keep the veterans aware of scams that are out there to take advantage of people who are kind of desperate for benefits and, get frustrated with the long hold times that VA has and just looking for anybody to help them. So let me just play this. It's less than a minute. If someone has approached you as a veteran and asked to represent you in VA claims, I will be very cautious about who I choose to represent me because there are many people out here who are not accredited. I usually leave in the description box of all my veterans videos about VA accredited representatives, veteran service officers that can represent you and who VA has vetted for you, right? So in the typical span of a VA claim, anybody that represents you and does not ask you for money up front are entitled to 20% of your past due benefits. I cannot vouch for and don't have any personal experience with the organization that's being referred to in this article, but I would suggest that you look at the VA accredited list and the veteran service officers. There are also VA attorneys that can represent you. Good luck and see you in the next video. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I have, like I said, 57 videos in the veterans benefits playlist. So check it out because they may answer some of your questions that you may have. Because I get some comments in the comment section about different things that we don't necessarily discuss in this particular video, but I want to make sure that you knew that there were resources available to you in the veterans playlist. Alaskan T, I had a question. Okay, ask your question, Alaskan. We may have time for that before we hop off the live today. And I wanted to say that because when you're, like I said, when you're applying for service connection for benefits to determine whether you're actually eligible, the DBQ also says, like, is it less likely than not, or is it at least as likely as not that the claim disability is related to service? It doesn't have to have incurred in service initially, but it's related to some kind of service. So let's say you got injured somehow, something happened in service, and now you're trying to connect it to an injury that perhaps was diagnosed after service. The DBQ addresses that, right? To say, yes, it is as likely or is not as likely, right? And in the VA world, is 51% in veterans win, right? So you don't have to show like 90%, 99% sure 51% is enough to get you a VA benefits claim granted in this particular world. So that's for service connection. If you're going for increased rating, there's a whole rating criteria, and I go into that for each disability, and I have several of those videos in the playlist that talks about what the criteria you need to meet to be able to get the next level. And it shows you what the criteria ratings are, right? So if you don't meet those things, then the examiner will say the person doesn't have the criteria to meet the symptoms to meet that particular criteria to get that particular rating. So it's kind of like, contrary to belief, it's not that the examiners are pulling anything out of their hat. They're examining the veteran to make sure you are upfront and honest about all your symptoms. I say that in another video, right? Don't over exaggerate, but don't be modest and saying like, oh, I'm fine. And then you won't expect a higher rating. Say everything that hurts, say everything that's bothering you, because the examiner is making an assessment of that. And then, memorializing that on the DBQ form for the RO to assess and to say, well, this person is or is not eligible for that next level of rating, right? Everybody is not going to be eligible for 100%. Although a lot of people would like to get that. I guess that's fortunate that you don't have the symptoms necessary to be at 100%, which means that, that means your symptoms are not as severe. But I know everybody's looking for the golden ticket to get 100%, right? And in reality, everybody is not going to get rated 100% because their symptoms are not as such. But for those of you that do have symptoms that you believe are severe, you want to make sure that you're fairly compensated for those symptoms, because that means a reduced reliability in the workplace based on these based on these disabilities that were incurred due to your service in the military, whatever branch you serve. So make sure you comment in the comments box. Lastly, did you have your question before we hopped off? And then I'll try to see if I can answer that, or if there's something that I'll have to refer you out to. Let's see. Fraud such as duplicated DBQs and plagiarized records, all relating to mental health from companies. Let me read it again. Fraud. What's the question? Are you asking me about, is it fraud, duplicated DBQs, and plagiarized records? Okay, so yes, plagiarized records. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, yes, a DBQ is important. All the time, you're not always required to have a VA exam. Let's say you submit a wealth of information from your private provider who has been treating you for the last 6 months to a year or even more, right? It says a progression of your symptoms, or just letting you know what the symptoms are, right? That can be rich enough with information and probative values for the RO or the agency of original jurisdiction to make a decision about whether you should be service connected or whether you should get an increased rating, right? In theory, it's more probative in value than a one-time trip to a VA contracted or a VA examiner who assess you that one time. Showing progressive symptoms over 6 months to 1 year shows that this particular provider has a history with you and would be able to document such and wouldn't be fabricating anything to make just for this claim if you shows a history of things, right? So in theory, you could have a DBQ that says one thing, and you can have these private treatment records or even VA treatment records, right, that show a different story. In theory, the RO has assessed the bigger picture, and if the treatment records show something that shows a severity that's more severe than what's reflected on the DBQ, then in theory, you would get whatever the severity is that's most severe, reflected hopefully on your treatment records. And like I said, it's not always required that you have a VA DBQ. You may have enough information in your treatment records that you submit, whether it's from private or VA, that will get you to where you need to go. So it's not always necessary. So Alaskan D, I'm trying to figure out what your question is. So could you rephrase it? Or if someone else has another question before I hop off. You just asking fraud such as duplicated DBQs, yes, that's fraud, and plagiarized records, all relating to mental health from companies. I'm trying to understand what the question is, because mental health, anything that's duplicated, that's plagiarized, relating to mental health from companies, I guess that's where I'm not clear about that. So if you want to submit a clarification, that's fine. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop it in the comment box now. And if you're watching on the replay, I know people haven't watched it today, which is Sunday, July 21st, hashtag replay game in the comment section and let me know, shout out where you're watching from. And we have some TXC crew. We have some people who are new to this channel. And if you're new here, we have various types of playlists. Veterans Benefits is one of the many playlists we have. But myself and Tracy, who's another attorney, we have various playlists that may be of interest to you or your family members. So make sure you hit that share button and the thumbs up button so that it makes sure it's shared with the wider YouTube algorithm. Okay, Alaskan D, I'm gonna hop off in a second, but I want to give you a quick beat to figure out whether you want to rephrase it or if you didn't want to, you know, ask it again in a different form. But I hope that this video was helpful to you, and if this video or other videos are helpful to you, please comment in the comment section or give the video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching today, and I hope to see you in the next video.